Glory to Jesus Christ. Can the interpreters hear us well? So, our event takes place in 2 languages, but before we start our Solemn Academy, I would like to invite you all for prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, thank you for the gift of freedom, and thank you for those that are protecting this freedom on the front lines. Dear Lord, please support those that have been afflicted by this horrid war, and let your Holy Spirit lead us towards victory and towards just peace. O Heavenly King, O Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art in all places and fillst all things, treasury of good things and giver of life, come and dwell in us and cleanse us from every stain and save our souls, O gracious Lord. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Glory to Jesus Christ. Can you hear me well? Dear fathers, friends, colleagues who are here to share in this wonderful day today with us. Before we begin, I would like to emphasize a couple of details. So if you would like to listen to us in Zoom in Ukrainian, please on Zoom panel, you need to pick Ukrainian language.
Follow us in English. Please choose the bottom translation and you will hear all our conference in English.
Всі, хто тут є в залі,
Там оберіть доріжку англійською мовою. So if you are in the room, you can make use of the headsets available. And now we would like to hand over to the head of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, to Father Dr. Roman Fihas. Thank you, Irena. And my today's co-moderator of our Solemn Academy is Irena Kitura, the coordinator of the Ecumenical Social Weeks of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. So I hope I will be the captain of the ship that flies into space, not the Titanic. So it's a pleasure of mine to start this Solemn Academy dedicated to the celebration of the 20th anniversary of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. So Institute was founded in the Ukrainian Catholic University, and many people have contributed to the founding of this institute. Many of them are here with us, many of them are online, many of them can't be here, unfortunately. Father Roman, can you think back to the times 20 years ago? A lot of events has happened since then. So maybe you can remind us how this all came into place, but please be brief. Well, I'm not that old yet, so I will maybe think back to the events not that of a distant past, but over the 20 years that have passed by, a new generation has come to be, people that live under very different circumstances, and the challenges that we have seen 20 years ago, now the challenges are very different and the prospects are different as well. But over these past 20 years, we have been through 2 revolutions, and now we are in the process of this horrid war, a great tragedy for our nation. But on the other hand, we see this great thirst of unity, freedom, the desire to overcome all of this evil. So we see this wonderful desire in the hearts of all our employees and in the hearts of all Ukrainians. So I'm not going to mention all the numerous projects of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies that came to pass over these 20 years, but during this academy, we will invite people over who have become the friends of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. And the fact that for 20 years, the Institute has been trying not to simply implement projects, not to only publish books and articles, But the first and most important endeavor was to build friendships, to build connections and relations of mutual respect. So we would like to invite Father Ihor Chaban, the head of the Patriarchate Commission on Interconfessional Dialogue of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, and on behalf of the head of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, His Beatitude Sviatoslav, he will share the greetings. Thank you, Father, for being here. Can you hear me? So, His Beatitude Sviatoslav, on the occasion of the 20th anniversary of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies of the Ukrainian Catholic University. The 20-year history of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies of the Ukrainian Catholic University is the history of a pilgrimage that, with unwavering faith in God and with the blessing of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, is trying to serve the ideas of ecumenism daily. Looking back at the path we have traveled and thinking about the 20 years of work and dedication to God's commandment that all may be one, we cannot but notice the greatest graces of God that the Institute has received. And it is with a sense of profound gratitude we ask God for His gift of assistance and support for the future. From the beginning of its activities, that is since 2004, the Institute of Ecumenical Studies of the UCU has occupied as an important place in the structure of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And thanks to its powerful research, teaching, and organizational activities, it is an important component on the theological map of Ukraine. So this was the dream of my predecessors, Metropolitan Andrei Sheptytskyi, Patriarchs Joseph Slipy, Miroslav Ivan Lubachivsky, and Lubomir Huzer, for whom ecumenical efforts have always been a priority and a visible sign of how seriously the UGCC takes its role in the ecumenical movement. So I extend my sincere greetings to the President of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies of UCU, Father Dr. Ivan Dobko, the Director, Father Dr. Roman Fihas, all the lecturers, and all the researchers of the Institute on the occasion of the anniversary. Thank you for your theological research, for care and ecumenical thinking, which inspires positive changes in their inter-Christian relations. I congratulate all the students from all over Ukraine and different countries who have deepened their knowledge in the field of ecumenism over the past 20 years, having acquired, thanks to the Institute, live context with the Pontifical Dicastery of Promoting Christian Unity, the World Council of Churches, the Commission of the Bishops' Conferences of the European Union, and the Conference of the European Churches. All of this has been made possible through financial support and kindness of such organizations as Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Porticus Foundation, Le Voix d'Orient Foundation, Renovabis Foundation, and the Dioceses of Mainz and Bamberg. Please always remember them and be grateful for their help. Today, the Institute's ecumenical activities are multifaceted. We have lectures, academic discussions, ecumenical and social weeks, the activities of the Ukrainian Christian Academic Society, and ecumenical formation program. We have interfaith meetings, conferences, and roundtables organized not simply in Ukraine, but also abroad. We should also mention the publication of professional literature, including one of the best biographies of Metropolitan Sheptytskyi by Father Kyrylo Korolevsky, as well as numerous works by leading theologians of the Catholic, Orthodox, and Protestant churches. Just recently in Kyiv, I presented a book, The Ecumenical Mission of the Eastern Catholic Churches of Europe Today. I emphasized that the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is increasingly becoming an active subject of ecumenical dialogue, and its voice is now resounding powerfully throughout the world. In this activity, the role of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies used to be and persists to be, who has the task of building bridges, serving as a modern catalyst for ecumenical dialogue, and helping the Church in search of new ways towards Christian unity. I pray that the work that you do and your service continue to bring abundant fruit of Christian love, and that belonging to the academic community of the Ukrainian Catholic University will become a special experience supported by all the richness of a large spiritual university family. May God's blessing be upon you. His Beatitude, Sviatoslav. Yes, of course, cooperation with the UGCC is extremely valuable, and I guess it's natural for our institute. And one of the fruits of our cooperation is a shared formation program for the employees of our institute, and we are working with Greek Catholic Church, helping them to work in the format where we have priests promoting ecumenism on the eparchies. One of the founders and the people who inspired of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, the one of its kind institution on the post-Soviet space. Unfortunately, he was not able to be here live, but he extended his greetings through video, and we would like to broadcast it now. Glory to Jesus Christ, dear Father Ivan, dear Antoine, dear Father Roman, dear employees, dear team of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, dear employees of the past, of the present, of the future. Happy 20th anniversary. The time has gone past from friendship to friendship. The first conference 20 years ago was about friendship being an ecumenical value. And today, this virtue, this modality of you and I, together with many others, we share in all of this in the times when we see terrible unfriendliness, when we see aggressive war. So over all of these years, the publications, the conferences, the training courses, various meetings, and perhaps what is most important, the testimony in the multi-confession Ukraine and also globally of all of you brings not just abundant fruit, but also true hope and faith that we will all stay together. Jesus said, "May you all be one as I and the Father are one." So these words uttered during the passions in the hours leading up to the time when Christ was crucified. So these values are the ones that you took up in your heart, but also took up as a sign of action. So may you have God's wisdom and courage to keep acting on God's will. And may our Institute of Ecumenical Studies keep developing, growing, finding creative approaches in this very difficult time when the evil, the enemy of humankind wants to set us against one another and to separate us. Your testimony, your resilience, your service is a great treasure, is a treasure for the university community, for our church, Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, and for all Christian service, for Ukraine and also for the world globally. May the Lord bless you and may you live many happy years. Thank you to the president of the Ukrainian Catholic University for his kind words. And now we would also like to hand over to Dr. Oleg Turi, Vice Rector of the Ukrainian Catholic University, maybe to remind us why UCU has become this natural environment for the Institute of Ecumenical Studies to come to pass, and how the influence has been mutual. Thank you, Father Roman. Thank you for inviting me, for giving me this opportunity. To be honest, I didn't expect that I should share memories. I just thought it was supposed to be a welcome word. I do have a lot of memories, in fact. So I will try to bring those two things together. I'm more than convinced that having such a glorious anniversary in such a wonderful environment, there will be many happy words uttered, many prospects offered, but I have been here since the very beginning, and not only an observer, but also active participant of many initiatives that came to pass even before the Institute was formally founded. And to be frank, my first profound acquaintance with Ivan Detsko took place during an ecumenical assembly in Graz, where he founded a very important project between Catholic and Lutheran or evangelical churches of Germany, Poland, but also Ukraine and Belarus. And I remember Antoine being an employee of the embassy back then, how he arrived first here during an official visit, and he was so interested in this university that he discovered that ecumenism is something that he lacks. And owing to this interest, but also owing to the openness of the heart, openness to forge a dialogue and overcome obstacles or difficulties, this institute came into being. It's the institute that brings people together on a single foundation, the foundation that is important, the foundation towards which Jesus calls us. This is our unity, something that he entrusted the disciples with and that we need to carry on. Being a vice rector of this university, and on behalf of our rector, I would like to say thank you to the Institute for the work that it does. But I would also like to say something else. You will hear many kind words, but I just wanted to mention how important the existence of this institute is for the university.
And there are three categories that I would like to mention here. They're about the name of the university, because we are the Ukrainian Catholic University. And thanks to the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, our Ukrainian component is understood not as something which speaks of our exclusivity, of something which makes us very different from the rest. Our Ukrainian part is something which really helps us to understand our union, which should be treated as strengths, not as the weakness of ours. This is about Ukrainians being open to everyone surrounding us, also being open to other people who are not necessarily similar to us. That is why, with this understanding of the Ukrainian component, there's a very close connection to the interpretation of Catholicism, because there had been many discussions about the name of the institute, and that was a very well thought over decision when we selected the name, because Catholic is not about the very face, it is about unity, it is about openness to think in terms of global categories. That is why, with this particular aspect, we can also speak about the third part. This is university, which is about universality, and this universality revolves around the fact that there are very many important values which are really important and fundamental for us. The very term oikumena is translated as part of the world which was inhabited. Universum, the way we understand it, is not only about some piece of land inhabited by people. This universum is interpreted in the category of the union of the entire world, our world, and the world that we believe in when we die. That is why this ecumenical perspective is something which opens this grandeur, this eternity. Thank you for reminding us by the activities of the university, and it's very important in terms of the values that we profess. I also would like to express the gratitude to the founders, to heads of the institute, to Reverend Dobko, because the way I see it, he is definitely the person who contributed a lot in terms of understanding of this versatility, not only in a very wide category, but actually he is the person who stands for Eastern Catholic churches, who promotes this equal dialogue between different confessions through concerted effort. Anton Orzhakovsky was the person who opened for me um, Orthodoxism, and he is the person who, with his activities and his very consistent actions, his determination helps us to discover more about each other, as well to discover more about other people that we are not always aware of. Thank you for your contribution. And I'm also grateful to everyone who followed suit. This is Pavlos Mitsuk, also Roman Fies, who is the current head of the institute. And ecumenism is not only the term which is not well accepted by who are always against it, but also when we speak about those who understand the crisis of this ecumenism, which really resulted in the situation that we find ourselves in. That is why it is not only about us yielding the fruits and enjoying what we have accomplished. There is a great challenge for the Institute to enrich this ecumenical dialogue, this ecumenical cooperation that you are building, and actually to revisit ecumenism in a wider sense. Let the Lord help you with that, and good people support you with this endeavor. And being a director of a friendly institute, as a sign of our friendship and solidarity, we would like to gift you the translations of our book, translated into 4 languages. This is the album about the church in exile, persecuted church, the experience of martyrdom. Yes, so this is a gift exchange, so to say. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Oleg, for your words, for the mission that you see within our institute, with our people. And also, we remember that we used to have a different premise, and then we started functioning within philosophy and theology faculty. That is why I would like to invite Reverend Dr. Yuri Shterko, the Dean of Philosophy and Theology faculty, who eagerly supports our initiatives, our colleagues, always eagerly participate in our activities, and the very ambience is really about philosophy and theology. It is really inspiring in terms of cooperation. Dear representatives of the institutes, dear sisters and brothers, of course, there are many words of greetings that we hear today, very warm words filled with gratitude for the Institute. And sometimes when I think of theology, which is very versatile and consists of a plethora of different components, without ecumenism, is something which is doomed to dying. When we do not have Christ, we have some other ideas or concepts in theology, then we understand that that is something that can just paralyze it. However, when what we are lacking in theology is ecumenism, this is what Dr. Oleg has just mentioned. We do not understand the nature of church, which is our union in our versatility, in our diversity. And that means that we are stuck to this very narrow approach in terms of different confessions, different notions by which we live. That is why these splits that we have in Christianity, this is something which does not only weaken our mission, this is a great shame of ours that we have to be cognizant of. That is why I am grateful today that at this faculty we have the Institute, which reminds us about a wider scale of theology. For me, ecumenism is implicitly about something which is not expressed. St. Augustine has mentioned that we speak about God in order not to be silent. There is no patent or license that anybody has, because sometimes, we try to take the lead. However, the Institute, in very gentle ways, shows us this wider horizon. That is why, dear colleagues, I would like to greet all of you here. And what is also special for me is the way you respond to the challenges of times. There are many things happening around us. We were hit by the pandemic. Now we are facing this horrendous war. What you're trying to do is to bring together Christians of different confessions, and not only Christians, in order to reflect upon these problems. And this is a role model for us. It is possible only because of the fact that we have a really great team in the Institute. And these are really the people who share similar values, and it is also about this flexibility, engagement in creation of different projects, the Ecumenical Social Week, as well as many certificate programs for chaplains of different confessions, to name a few. And it is all about people, as I have already pinpointed. That is why, dear colleagues, Reverend Roman, Irina, Helena, other colleagues who were in leadership of this institute, contributed to the activities of the institute. We are profoundly grateful to you for your everyday work and determination. And as Saint Paul said, it's very important that all your efforts, they bear fruit. My heartfelt greetings to all of you. I wish you lots of joy from what you do, and let your example be inspiring for others also to work with similar projects, which are very important and relevant and very practical. Reverend Dr. Yuri, we also have something for you. This is a so-called family look. This is a symbolic present for you. The activity of the Institute is not possible without our donors, and one of the first ones, one of the first foundations which believed in our Institute right from the start, that was the Friend Foundation, L'Ovdorion Foundation. And Monsignor Pascal Golnish is the president of the L'Orient Foundation. He's joining us online from Beirut. He is in Lebanon right now. And also, I would like to mention that Monsignor Pascal is really concerned about Ukraine when the war broke out. Well, his colleagues also visited Ukraine multiple times. He has been to Lviv and Kyiv. Thank you so much for your solidarity with us, for standing by us. Over to you, Monsignor Pascal. I would like to welcome all Ukrainian friends. I am in Beirut now. I am being blocked because of the explosions which took place yesterday in the country. And to some extent, it makes us even closer to the sufferings of Ukrainians. You know about the great respect that we have for everything that the Institute of Ecumenical Studies has been doing, and we congratulate you on the 20th anniversary of the Institute's activity. And of course, it is about the upcoming future for all of you. We know very well the history of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And we also know that it is very important to be spiritually courageous, to be open for the very idea of ecumenism. I think that your efforts, ecumenical efforts in particular, are concerned not only with Ukraine, but also with Europe, well, at least eastern part of Europe. Together with our friends, with Anton Arzhukovsky, we need to try to do our best for the ecumenical dialogue to include the Ukrainian problem and also the problems of Eastern Europe. We know about these evil forces which are getting even stronger in this world. We have to withstand these forces of death also through ecumenical action. The war that you are fighting is also something which is related to us. And ecumenical activities you've been carrying out is also part of what we are engaged in. I am delighted to see that we have very close connections between the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church and the Church of France. I'm also delighted to inform that we will have some leaders from the Ukrainian church visiting us shortly. I wish you fruitful work. Glory to Ukraine. There is another friend and partner of ours. This is the Evangelical Foundation of the German Evangelical Church, which is represented by Dr. Martin Ehlert, a close friend of ours, a symbol of solidarity and support. We've had very many Zoom meetings with Dr. Martin, especially with the full-scale invasion, and he is the person who sincerely roots for us. He was really wondering how it was possible for us to do what we are doing. And this is solidarity not only with the Institute, but also with all Ukrainians. This is a great value for us. Unfortunately, Mr. Ehlert cannot join us, but we also have some video, a greeting from Mr. Ehlert.
Your Beatitude, dear
Ваше блаженство,
Director and dear colleagues and dear students.
Rector,
First of all, I have to apologize for being here only in an electronic format and not present among you. This is due to a very short change of my schedule, and I apologize for that. I would have liked to be part of your celebrations, but I'm very happy that I can send the greeting now to you, and it's a great pleasure to send our greetings from Germany. I both want to speak on behalf of the University of Halle and also of the Protestant Church in Germany, because I was privileged to make experiences with you and to share common experiences, both as university professor and also as ecumenical officer. So it's my privilege to send the greetings and the best wishes of both institutions to you. It's a great pleasure and honor to be among you and to send these greetings. And you proposed to say a few words on friendship as an ecumenical value, and I think it's self-evident that you are a very good example for that, and your institutions and the people who represent your institutions are a very good and excellent example for that, because what you are doing is that you are doing ecumenical formation in very, very difficult times, because you know that it's a value in itself to be in touch with one another and to understand one another better and to learn from each other, especially in these challenging and difficult times. Ecumenical and theological formation is not just a luxury which has to be added somewhere and then forgotten, but it's a central thing. And that's something I learned from working with you, because what you showed to me and what your students showed to me and what the teaching personnel of your institution showed to me, that it's really crucial to have ecumenical and theological formation for the formation of the self-understanding and for the preservation and for the accentuation and for the formation of your individuality, both as a person and as a group, and also for the ecumenical dialogue with not only with the other churches, but also with people who come from different contexts. So this is something I really learned from you, that in times of crisis and even in these difficult times of war, for you, it's a way to affirm, to find and affirm your identity by doing theological and ecumenical formation. And I was privileged to experience that before the war, while visiting with students from Halle. I was privileged to cooperate with you when we were working together with EKD. And I was privileged even to be a part of your examinations. And I enjoyed that very much. And it was a great pleasure, and I want to continue that. And I want to continue both cooperating with you and learning from you. And I wish you all the best. Many congratulations, not only from me personally, but also from my institutions. And my prayers are with you, and please, let's keep our friendship, because for me it was a great privilege to know you and to have you among my friends and to keep you there. Thank you so much, and all the best to you.
Дякуємо пану Ілерту.
Thank you,
Завдяки
Mr.
сучасним
Ehlert.
технологіям ми
Owing to
можемо
present-day technology, we can both be together and have people on Zoom, and we have a lot of video greetings sent to us, and we will watch one more just now from Thomas Berenger, the director of the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung in Ukraine. By the way, the foundation celebrated its 30th anniversary of its activities in Ukraine, and our history of cooperation dates back to the Second Ecumenical Social Week back in 2009, when I was a volunteer, where I was a volunteer once, and over the past couple of weeks, couple of years, we cannot imagine hosting and holding these weeks without the support of Konrad Adenauer Foundation. So we are very grateful to have this video message.
On behalf of Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, I wish the Institute of Ecumenical Studies all the best for its 20th anniversary. We are a long-standing partner of the Institute, and it is not a coincidence that the only institute in the region that does ecumenic studies is located in Ukraine. Ukraine is a country that belongs to Europe, that is part of Europe. And the cooperation between different confessions is something that is very important for religions in Europe. And this is a contrast to other countries and other regions. So I wish you all the best for the 20th anniversary, and I'm looking forward to our future cooperation as we did in the past. Thank you very much.
The Institute of Ecumenical Studies, it's unique. It's unique in the Eastern Europe, but we also have an institute in Roma headed by Dr. Hersens Destevel, and we would like to invite Reverend Destevel to say a couple of words. It's very important for us to keep in touch with Vatican, and Father Reverend Destevel works for the Dicastery for Christian Unity, and since the very beginning we have had a very warm relationship. So thank you so much for being with us, and the floor goes to you. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Of the Institute for Ecumenical Studies of the Angelicum, but also on behalf of the Dicastery for Promoting Christian Unity, and of course on my own behalf, I would like to congratulate the president of the Institute, Monsignor Dr. Ivan Datsko, the director, Reverend Dr. Roman Fihas, as well as all the teachers, students, and the whole team of the Institute. And I would like, of course, also to greet my dear friends, Professor Konstantin Sigov, that I see here, Professor Pavlo Smitsnyuk, Father Igor Shaban, and Dr. Katerina Pekridu, and many others. I have known the Institute of Ecumenical Studies since its foundation, when I was director of the Istina Ecumenical Center in Paris, and I have had the opportunity to work with the Institute on several occasions, in particular with Professor Antoine Arjakovsky. And I would like to say that I thank God and really admire the work that has been done over the past 20 years, despite the difficult conditions. As we know, Ukraine is a laboratory for ecumenism, and the UKU Institute of Ecumenical Studies has become a particularly important place, not only in Ukraine, but in Europe, articulating the three dialogues necessary for ecumenism: the dialogue of truth between theologians, the dialogue of love between church representatives, and the dialogue of life between all the baptized. But of course, the most important of all these three dialogues is undoubtedly the dialogue of life. And that is why I am delighted with the theme of this anniversary, friendship. Friendship as an ecumenical value. Indeed, the movement for unity would not exist without friendship. The ecumenical movement has been driven by great friendships. And one of the great pioneers of ecumenical movement, Father Fernand Portal, a pioneer of ecumenism in the Catholic Church in the 1920s, gave a conference in Louvain in November 1925 entitled "The Role of Friendship in the Union of the Churches." It is a beautiful conference. And Portal illustrated this point with the examples of the friendship between the great Russian Orthodox philosopher Vladimir Solovyov and the French Catholic Henri Laurent, who was the first president of the Semaine Sociale de France. But the best example was, of course, his own friendship, the friendship between Father Fernand Portal himself and the Anglican Lord Halifax, a friendship that led to the Malines conversations between Catholics and Anglicans in the 1920s, the first theological dialogue between Catholics and Anglicans. And Father Yves Congar said of these friendships between Portal and Halifax, I quote, "Portal owes it to the friendship of Lord Halifax to have understood things that no book can explain, to understand things that no book can explain. This is the gift of friendship." And the promoter of this Malin conversation, Cardinal Mercier, said in his testament what could be the motto of the ecumenical movement. He said, "To unite, we must love one another. To love one another, we must know one another. And to know one another, we must go to meet one another." So, in conclusion, dear friends, may this anniversary of the Institute for Ecumenical Studies in Lviv, celebrated under the sign of friendship, be an opportunity to rekindle this desire for unity, this desire to go out and meet one another, to deepen these ecumenical friendships founded on the friendship of Christ for us, who tells us, "I call you friends." Thank you and ad multos annos. Многое лето.
Дякуємо, отче Гіацинте, за вашу дружбу.
Thank you, Reverend Destiville, for this friendship, and I hope that this friendship will continue for many, many years. And now we move on to our main part of the meeting of the Academy. We will listen to a couple of speeches by our founders, partners, and friends, and we would like to invite Reverend Dr. Ivan Detsko, the founder of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. We call him our patriarch. He is a member of Theological Commission of Catholic and Orthodox churches, but what is most important, owing to his great desire, this Institute of Ecumenical Studies came into being and was capable of generating that many ideas that are still flourishing and bearing fruit in the present day. Father Detsko, the floor goes to you. Glory to Jesus Christ. So what I have to say will be a little bit different from all the greetings that we have just heard. I would like to share with you the story of how it all came into being and how our institute evolved. So a few weeks after his beatitude, Patriarch Miroslav Ivan Lubachevsky returned to Lviv on March 30th, 1991. We started having discussions about reopening of the Lviv Theological Academy and therefore, in a while, the Ukrainian Catholic University. So in the course of these conversations, I suggested to his beatitude, Miroslav, to entrust Dr. Boris Hudzyak, who was then still a student, with this special task. His beatitude agreed, and he asked me to make a call to Dr. Guzak, who was back then in California, to see if he would be willing to take on the task. After receiving his positive answer, he soon arrived in Lviv and he started working on it. Since then, we have met very often and we discussed how this mission could be accomplished. When Lviv Theological Academy's activities were resumed, I was asked if I could teach at the theological faculty and what could be the discipline. I replied that my doctoral thesis was on the ecumenical efforts on God's servant, Metropolitan Andrei Sheptytskyi, and I would be happy to teach ecumenical theology. So this is how my teaching career started in Lviv Theological Academy and then in the UCU, and I taught the history of the ecumenical movement. It was at this exact time, during the pontificate of Pope John Paul II, the then Pontifical Council for Promoting the Unity of Churches was instructed to prepare scientific symposia for the year 2000, and the theme of these symposia was, among other things, was the role of the Bishop of Rome in the first and the second millennium. It was back in 1998 when the head of our church was still Miroslav Ivan Lubachevsky, but his functions were already being performed by Bishop Lubomir Huzar, and he was the one who asked me to participate in the symposia. Here I would like to underscore that at the very root, when we were just working on the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, we always were close. We were seeking advice from all the heads of our churches, be it with Miroslav Lubachevsky, be it with Lubomir Huzar, or be it now with his beatitude Sviatoslav. And today, likewise, on our administrative council, we have a permanent member of the council, Father Dr. Ihor Chaban, who also spoke today, and I'm grateful to have heard greetings from his beatitude Sviatoslav. And we have reported not just to Father Chaban, but to the head of our church through Father Dr. Chaban. Vice Rector Oleg Turi also spoke about the role I played in Graz. And, you know, it was still in the past century that I participated in various scientific conferences that were held for both Catholics, Orthodox and Protestant of Ukraine, Poland, Russia, and Belarus. Even though I had a lot of contacts with Papal's Council, now the dicastery, even before the Pope arrived to Lviv in 2001, still I was officially the representative of our church, and this allowed me to meet many important representatives of the institution. For instance, Cardinal Edward Iris Cassidy, Bishop Pierre Dupre, Bishop Brian Farrell, Monsignor Eleutherius Fortino, and back then he didn't work in the council, but also with Reverend Histavel, that I'm so happy to see and grateful for his kind words. And also with other representatives, we were all those that shared in what we call friendship. And it was then that I first met an outstanding Orthodox theologian, Metropolitan John Zizoulis, with whom we later worked proficiently during plenary meetings of this mixed Catholic and Orthodox commission. So in June 2001, Lviv Theological Academy was officially recognized at the Ukrainian Catholic University. And since then, knowing that during the first Synod of Bishops of the UGCC in May 1992, after the return of his beatitude to Lviv, the Synod decided that the issue of the unity of churches, and that is ecumenical efforts, in the spirit of our predecessors, Metropolitan Sheptytskyi, Patriarch Slipei, Lubomir Huzer, obviously, and now his beatitude Sviatoslav, still is and always will remain a priority for the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. So, having listened to the opinions of his beatitude Lubomir Huzer since 2002 and on, our conversations with the rector of the UCU, then already a priest, Father Boris Hudzak, revolved around the questions of establishing an Institute of Ecumenical Studies under the auspices of the UCU. When searching for a director of our institute, various names were suggested. And one day, Father Rector Boris told me that he suggests that I become the president of the institute and Dr. Antoine Arjakovsky be appointed a director. He had been working at the French embassy in Kyiv until then. I want to share with you that it was not just the wonderful cooperation that we had, but we were also helped a lot by vice rectors of Father Hudzak, also when Father Demed was the rector of the academy, and also in the time of Father Dr. Bohdan Prach. And now we have a great cooperation with Dr. Professor Taras Dobko. So I'm very grateful for all the support of the rectors that we have enjoyed. But now let's circle back to Dr. Antoine Arjakovsky. I didn't know anything about him at the time, but Boris explained that he was a Frenchman of Russian descent. He was Orthodox. He was married to a French woman, a Roman Catholic, and he had 2 children who had already spoken Ukrainian, and that he believed that we would work together well, given the goodwill of both of us. And the very fact that he was an Orthodox and I'm a Greek Catholic will be a wonderful proof that our institute is truly ecumenical. And having received this, having given this suggestion to his beatitude Lubomir, I have given my consent that Dr. Grzykovsky be the first director of the institute. So the UCU administration allocated us with the premises on the 4th floor of Svincitsko Street 17, next door to the Institute of Religion and Society, headed by Professor Miroslav Maranovich.
This choice turned to be a really blessed one because we complemented each other and then we also became friends. And in the Lord, God's wisdom blessed our work. And so, since 2004, we have commenced our work. We recruited employees and outlined areas for future work. Soon we had friendly and business relations established not only with Anton but also with his entire family. We found very interesting people to work with us. We also outlined the goals of our work. First of all, we have identified 3 areas to which we will devote our efforts. Namely, this is teaching about ecumenism, scientific conferences, symposia, and also publications. I was responsible for teaching. I undertook this particular area, and it turned out that there were so many people who were keenly interested in the ecumenical subject matter. So this really motivated me to prepare even better for my teaching. Regarding scientific conferences, Antoine and I had no doubt that we have to start this part of work with very solid and well prepared conference. I prayed a lot. I also served divine liturgies for this intention. After some longer meetings, we decided that the first conference in June of 2005, under the title Friendship as an Ecumenical Value, will take place. And indeed, this conference was extremely successful. And today, when we celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Institute, we selected this name as our goal. Indeed, it is extremely important to cultivate friendships between Christians, Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants, or Anglicans, because if a person is a friend, a close friend of somebody else, it is much easier to resolve some shared problems. It is really great that we have Jorge Kovalenko, that we have Professor Konstantin Silo, that we have Ludmila Filipovich, who are Orthodox. But through concerted effort, we keep working to revive this unity of churches. An important date in the life of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies was December 2005, appointment of me as the president of the Institute, a member of the International Commission for the Theological Dialogue between the Catholic and Orthodox churches. Since the inception, I was also the representative of the entire Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. And in times of his beatitude, Patriarch Sviatoslav, in 2016, I was appointed a member of the coordinating committee of this commission. This gave our church and our institute access to various representatives of the Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches. They were also united by this friendship and learning more about different traditions, which definitely led to alignment of Christian churches even more. I cannot fail to mention the Century of the Valorant Congresses initiated by Metropolitan Andrei Sheptytskyi in 1907, together with Olomouc Archbishops Kirill Stoyan and Leopold Pratzen. The Synod of Bishops of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church decided to solemnly celebrate this anniversary with a separate congress in the same location of Velhrad. Twice, Professor Arshakovsky and I went to Olomouc and Velhrad to agree upon with the then Archbishop of Olomouc, Jan Grabner, the program of this congress, which took place in the days of June 28th, July the 1st of 2007, with numerous participants from the Ukrainian and Czech episcopate, priests, monasticism, male and female, as well as the faithful. After the Velvrad Congress, the Institute of Ecumenical Studies organized various conferences attended by Orthodox Protestants and Roman Catholics, Ukrainians, international guests, and subsequently published reports, separate publications that will remain for centuries to come. And no matter how many conferences were organized together with the Institute by the Ukrainian universities as well as foreign ones. Also in Rome, Sarajevo, Edinburgh, La Salette, in Bucharest as well. Everywhere the scientific and theological world learned more about the activities of our Institute of Ecumenical Studies. At the same time, it was decided to start the tradition of Ecumenical Social Week, which we already had 16, and this October there will be the 7th iteration, together with various academic institutions. This very carefully prepared for us, studied and researched various topical issues that affect our lives in Ukraine and beyond Ukraine. And then we add the activities of the Ukrainian Christian Academic Society, organized in cooperation with various Ukrainian universities and academies, including the Orthodox ones. We can see how this range of multiple topics explored by our institute is growing. At the same time, for the clergy of our church, the institute introduced the ecumenical formation program, both in Ukrainian and in English languages. The institute has organized 10 seminars in order to advance knowledge about the achievements of the ecumenical dialogue. Also, we know how important publishing is. In addition to the works of the founders, the Institute published various works by international theologians and historians. The best biography of Metropolitan Andrei Sheptytskyi, penned by Kirill Korolevsky, about Orthodoxy and Catholicism, about the so-called Unitism, about the Council of Florence, about Rome, about the Patriarchates of the East, about Fatia Schism, about general and ecumenical councils, as well as many Ukrainian publications of Ukrainian theologians. But the most famous publication was the Memoirs of Patriarch Joseph Slipy. From the very beginning of its foundation, the leadership of the Institute, Anton and me, established a very good contacts with the Pontifical Dicastery for the promotion of the unity of churches, the World Council of Churches, the Evangelical Church of Germany, Evangelische Kirche Deutschland, the Council of European Bishops' Conferences, the Conference of European Churches, the Konrad Adenauer Stiftung, the Podicus Foundation, Louvre d'Orient Foundation, the German organization Renovabis, and the dioceses in Mainz and Bamberg, which not only opened new paths and helped to build new contexts, but they generously financially supported us to implement various projects of the Institute. We always remember about them and we are extremely grateful for their help. Word, the triune God has blessed our word. However, for this blessing of God to rest further upon us, we must first of all pray often and intensely for the unity of our churches. We must strengthen our work, particularly in times of war, and serve as well as to testify to all those who seek our help, whether they are Catholics, Orthodox, Protestants, Jews, Muslims, or even atheists. Let us be humble and always keep in mind the words of Christ. Holy Father, keep them in your name, the name which you have given me, that they may be one, even as we are. Above all, let us fulfill Christ's covenant that all may be one. Thank you for attention. Thank you, Reverend Ivan. Now I would like to invite to the floor Dr. Arzakovsky, and Reverend Van Desko mentioned a lot about him. Antoine has been living in Lviv for 10 years, rooting for ecumenism. This is something that he's committed to. He is based in Paris now. In Bernardine College, there was a very interesting presentation yesterday. And for me, if to speak about my experience, that was the interview that I had with you. This is how it all started. And you explained to me what ecumenism is, how important it is, how religion, faith, and this ecumenical approach can influence societal development, different initiatives, how you can embed ecumenical approach in the growth of societies. Thank you, Irena. Thank you, Reverend Ivan, for your invitation.
Je suis un peu ému. Я немножко взволнован. Я буду говорить по-французски. Ирина согласилась переводить
I will be
по-украински.
speaking in French, and we will have interpretation from French.
Je suis un peu ému parce que c'est vrai que il y a 20 ans, Monseigneur Boris Goudziak
I'm really moved because 20 years ago, I undertook not only a new job, that was something much bigger for me. When Boris Hudziak, Vice Rector, also Ivan Datsko invited me
temps
to
qu'ils m'ont
join this
invité,
effort.
j'ai reçu une carte postale avec une phrase du livre des Proverbes où il est dit que la sagesse de Dieu se trouve au carrefour et appelle le peuple à la sagesse et à l'intelligence.
When I was invited, I also received an envelope. There was an emblem there on this envelope, and there was a statement there, and it was written there that wisdom is at the crossroads, and this is something which calls upon
Senti
bigger
depuis le
wisdom.
début de mon travail ici au service de l'université, de l'Institut, jusqu'à la fin, jusqu'à mon départ, et jusqu'à aujourd'hui, en voyant cette magnifique fresque de la sagesse de Dieu dans l'église de la sagesse ici, la présence de la sagesse dans ma vie personnelle, mais aussi dans la vie de l'Institut.
When I started working until the very end, and now when I was present at the liturgy, I saw this very beautiful icon of wisdom of God, and I realized that that is something which is always present in my life
Donc
and
voilà,
at
je suis
this
très ému.
university.
Je voudrais pas être trop long parce qu'on a eu des discours déjà. Je voudrais dire 3 choses. La première chose, c'est d'abord une très grande reconnaissance pour toute l'équipe de l'Université catholique et de l'Institut d'études écuméniques.
I am deeply touched, and I'm not going to speak for a long time because we've heard many nice words already. I would like to focus on 3 most important things. I would like to express gratitude to the entire community of the Ukrainian Catholic University, and also would like to express gratitude to the team of the Institute of
Tout à l'heure, j'ai
Ecumenical
croisé
Studies.
Jeffrey Wills, par exemple. On n'a pas mentionné son nom encore, mais il a joué un rôle très important aussi auprès de Monseigneur Boris, du Père Ivan, de Miroslav, de Oleg Turi, du cardinal Gouzard, qui ont été à l'origine de cet institut. C'est pas possible de nommer tout le monde, mais ils sont dans mon cœur, ils sont dans mes prières, et je suis heureux d'être avec eux aujourd'hui.
Я сьогодні зустрівся з
I
Джефрі
have met with
Вілсом. Його
Jeffrey
ім'я сьогодні
Wills today, and I think it is important to mention his name as well, together with Bishop Hudziak, Miroslav Marinovich, Reverend Ivan Datsko, and others. All these individuals, as well as Cardinal Husar. All these people are in my heart and I pray for
Et
these
bien
people.
entendu, je suis admiratif par le travail que fait l'Institut aujourd'hui. Il continue à faire un boulot remarquable avec le père Roman, avec Irina, avec Olga, avec toute l'équipe de l'Institut, dans des conditions de guerre qui sont juste abominables, et vous arrivez à trouver une énergie fantastique qui fait que dans le monde entier, aujourd'hui, on sait qu'il y a cet institut qui fait un travail remarquable en Ukraine et en Europe. Donc, je suis juste extrêmement admiratif par le travail que vous faites.
I'm in awe of all activities of the Institute's representatives, Reverend Roman, especially in this time of war. Despite everything, you feel motivated to do something good, and the Institute of Ecumenical Studies is known
La deuxième chose que
in
je voudrais
Ukraine and
dire, c'est
beyond
que
Ukraine.
moi, j'ai le sentiment, bien que je sois parti en 2011, donc ça fait déjà un moment, bien que je sois parti à Paris, j'ai le sentiment de continuer à faire corps avec l'Institut d'études écuméniques, même si je me trouve maintenant à Paris au Collège des Bernardins. J'essaye de continuer le travail de l'Institut à ma mesure depuis Paris.
Хочу
And though I left the Institute in 2011, which was a long time ago, I still feel as part of the Institute, part of what you do, though I'm in the college of Bernardin College in Paris right now, and I also try
Et bien
to
entendu, comme je le disais hier,
contribute
je
to
crois
what
que
you
c'est
do.
important de bien comprendre que l'écuménisme, c'est pas juste un mouvement d'unité entre les chrétiens, c'est vraiment une nouvelle science qui permet de réunir les différentes confessions, les différentes traditions religieuses, les différentes convictions, les différentes disciplines. Et c'est la raison pour laquelle j'ai écrit ce livre de l'essai de métaphysique œcuménique.
І водночас я хочу
At
наголосити,
the same time, I would like to reiterate that ecumenism is not only the movement for unity of churches, this is a science, and this is a science which tries to combine different aspects, and that is exactly the reason why I wrote and presented a metaphysics book on ecumenism yesterday.
L'amitié consiste aussi à dire la vérité. Et dire la vérité, ça a des conséquences politiques. C'est pour ça qu'on ne peut pas séparer l'œcuménisme également d'une dimension incarnée, politique.
Ecumenism also means to tell the truth, to speak the truth, and it has some political implications. We cannot separate one from another one.
Donner l'exemple de cette phrase qui était à la base de notre conférence en 2004 sur l'amitié, lorsque nous rappelions les paroles du Christ, qu'il n'y a pas de plus grand amour que de donner sa vie pour ceux qu'on aime. Et moi, Jésus-Christ, je ne vous appelle plus des disciples, je vous appelle mes amis. Et il n'y a plus de distance entre nous. Je vous ai fait savoir tout ce que le Père m'a fait savoir.
I would also like to remind you the expression that we used during our very first conference when Jesus says that there is no greater love than that when you give your life for the sake of your brother. And
не називаю вас своїми
he also
учнями,
says, I
називаю
do
вас
not
своїми
refer to you
друзями.
as my disciples, but I refer to
Eh
you
bien,
as my friends.
Ce qui est terrible, c'est qu'aujourd'hui, le patriarche Kirill de Moscou utilise cette même phrase pour justifier un génocide contre la nation ukrainienne, en disant aux soldats russes qui agressent l'Ukraine qu'il n'y a pas de plus grand amour que de donner sa vie pour ceux qu'on aime. Ça, c'est une hérésie. Et il faut une science écuménique qui explique que c'est une hérésie.
І жахливим
And we see the terrible fact that Patriarch Cyril uses the same expression when addressing the soldiers who are committing the genocide of Ukrainians here. He says that there is no greater love than that of giving up your life for the sake of your friend's life. And in order to prove that this is a heresy, we need this ecumenical
Une science
science in
écuménique
place.
qui n'est pas uniquement théologique. Une science écuménique qui intègre toutes les disciplines du savoir, y compris le droit. Le droit international dit que c'est une agression que la Russie commet contre l'Ukraine. Et donc, en ce sens, les paroles du Christ sont mal interprétées par le patriarche Kirill. Le Christ se donne entièrement pour ses amis et il ne peut pas justifier le génocide contre un autre peuple. Donc on a besoin d'une science transdisciplinaire qui intègre la théologie, le droit, l'histoire, etc.
And this ecumenical science, it cannot only rest on theology, it also needs to have other components like law, for instance. So we need to be able to prove that this is, in fact, aggression, and we need to therefore make use of ecumenical
Oui,
science
c'est la
that
troisième chose que je voulais vous
comprises
dire.
various components.
La science écuménique, aujourd'hui, elle a nécessairement en Ukraine une dimension politique. La science écuménique, elle va devoir s'occuper de ce qu'on appelle la dérachisatsia. De la même façon que le Conseil écuménique des Églises a été créé en 1948 à Amsterdam pour se libérer des fausses théologies politiques, eh bien, demain, il va falloir créer un nouveau mouvement écuménique fondé sur l'amitié et qui va non plus s'occuper de dénazification, mais de dérachisation. Après la Deuxième Guerre mondiale,
In the same way, like it happened after the World War II, when various organizations came into being, for instance, the World Council of Churches in 1948, in the same way, we have to enable a similar movement for the sake of derussification, and we need to walk this path and contributes all the possible efforts to it, and ecumenical science
des
as well.
orthodoxes, des catholiques, des protestants, des gens de tout horizon, une nouvelle historiographie, une nouvelle science du droit, une nouvelle ecclésiologie. Il faut travailler ensemble pour ce travail de fond que j'appelle la dérachisatsia.
And this ecumenical science that would involve all the representatives of various denominations, it should be able to offer, to suggest new branches of science, new historiography, new law that would also
Que je voulais vous dire, je ne veux pas
cover
être
the
trop
work
long.
that
Encore une
needs to
fois,
be
je vous
done on
remercie d'être présent,
derussification.
d'être avec nous. Moi, de mon côté, je fais tout ce que je peux en France pour lutter contre la propagande russe. Je considère que c'est une mission œcuménique de dire la vérité. En faisant ce travail avec beaucoup d'autres, heureusement, en France et ailleurs, nous sommes unis et nous allons vaincre contre les démons qui cherchent à diviser le corps de l'Église.
So this is everything I had to say for today. I will be brief. I don't want to keep you for too long, but I just want to assure you that I go out of my way in France to support Ukraine and to be a part of this fight against the demons. Thank you. Thank you so much, Antoine, for the fact that you keep on fighting for the truth and keep on supporting us in the fight that we wage. Thank you. And in order to switch our attention a little bit, it was intentionally that it didn't speak much of the history of how the Institute was founded, because we wanted to showcase everything in a movie. So we would like to share with you a brief movie about how the Institute of Ecumenical Studies was founded and what were the main ideas, attitude, and approaches that were used during these times. The idea of creating the Institute of Ecumenical Studies has for long existed among the bishops of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church, especially when the residence of the head of the church returned to Ukraine. The Second Vatican Council took place in the time when UGCC in Ukraine was underground, so neither the faithful nor the clergy had an opportunity to get acquainted with its achievements, and for many years on. At the same time, Ukraine is a multi-confessional state, and at the same time, between different denominations, there were many lines of tension, and we still had the memory of competing over the church property alive when UGCC was finally able to come out from underground. So both Catholics and Orthodox had a baggage of negative experience. So in reference to these circumstances, we saw a need for a scholarly institution that would be able to respond to the most acute problems of the Ukrainian environment. In the early 2000s, when the Institute of Ecumenical Studies came into being, these were the times after the preparation of celebration of the year 2000 years since the birth of Christ. And that at that period of time, in a way, we have all been able to bring our churches back to life. We realized what our identity was, and we were able to face each other and discover each other. So this was the period in Ukraine and all across the world when the interest towards ecumenism, to interdenominational dialogue, was being embodied in specific projects. For instance, Uspenska readings. The conference was founded at that time, and Institute of Ecumenical Studies takes shape of a certain platform that allows for meetings, for dialogues, and also for scientific and scholarly research. In 2004, the Senate of the Ukrainian Catholic University adopts a decision about creating or founding the Institute of Ecumenical Studies with the need to respond to the then challenges. The institute was meant to provide an unbiased assessment of the existing religious situation in Ukraine and suggest the ways of resolving problems. The institute was headed by Father Ivan Detsko, a Greek Catholic priest, and Orthodox theologian Antoine Arjakovsky. We need to remember that the first synod, where the bishops of the Greek Catholic Church, the synod that took place in Lviv in May of 1992, that still then it was underscored that the issue of unity of churches, and therefore the issue of ecumenism, is a priority for our church. So being a part of the Soviet totalitarian regime, we were deprived of all the achievements of ecumenical movement. So being Greek Catholics, we were stripped of the achievements of the progress that was achieved during the Second Vatican Council, and afterwards all the decrees, shared meetings, and achievements. We had no access to any of that in Ukraine. At the time, there was as if a gap both in the theoretical foundation but in the practical foundation, and we needed to build everything from scratch. What was interesting at the time was that we understood that institutionally we cannot do much because there were clear boundaries between the churches, and there were very few bridges to be crossed. So in our institute, we started working on these new bridges, new connections between denominations. So we were able to call upon scholars from different denominations, and based in such connections, shared seminars and conference, we were able to forge these friendly connections. When the Institute was founded, it coincided with a very important event in Ukraine's fight for independence, the Orange Revolution. The experience of Maidan, the experience of ecumenical efforts, shared prayer of the representatives of different denominations, it testified to the fact that despite the fact that there was no official dialogue between Ukrainian churches, Ukrainian Christians are able to find common language and pull their efforts together. So this testified that having friendly relationship is a precondition for ecumenical dialogue. And in 2005, the inaugural conference took place entitled Friendship as Ecumenical Value. So my fruitful cooperation with the Institute of Ecumenical Studies started right after the Orange Revolution. It was then that Ukrainian public theology came into being, Ukrainian theology that works on political and social context, that speaks about acute and important topics for the society. And initially it was an ecumenical interdenomination process. We were together on the stage of the Revolution of Dignity. We went live together. We spoke together. We shared things that were similar. And this led to the fact that our cooperation was stepped up. So the first conference of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, so basically the conference that was the founding conference for our institute, was entitled Friendship as Ecumenical Value, and was extremely felicitous name that reflected the gist of what our institute should be working on. Because for many people, ecumenical movement might produce an impression of a certain political game between stronger Christian centers where everybody is looking for their field of influence or looking for ways to make arrangements. But it's important to see the approach of ecumenism as unity between all the Christians. It's about the relationship. When people are hostile towards one another, it's clear that it's difficult to bring them together. It's like a broken pot. Even if you glue it back together, you can still see that it was broken. You can see the cracks. So the word friendship is not merely a word. It has a more profound dimension of what we expect today. When in our interdenominational field, we are such good friends that we don't only understand each other well and communicate with one another well, but we also achieve shared goals for our faithful. For instance, we already have a shared calendar. We also will have shared liturgy modality. So something that brings together the people that don't only have the experience of being Ukrainians together, but also being Christians together. So for the same sake of studying and researching economical issues, the Institute has organized 30 international conferences, 17 international forums called Ecumenical Social Weeks, 60 seminars and webinars, published over 35 books and articles. We have had 4 training programs from which over 500 people graduated. The aim and the activities of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies is to set the tone for co-living, collaboration, co-understanding of the Christian communities and churches that are located on the territory of Ukraine. And it really fits well with the mission of our university. It fits well with our efforts, the care that we take, even the requirements that we put forward towards the management of the university. Our aim was not to bring together all the churches here and now, but our aim was to create as many bridges between churches as possible in order to later be able to see that we walk hand in hand in one direction, that we are not competitors, but we can serve to one another and learn from one another. The Institute of Ecumenical Studies is a member of international organizations. It works with educational institutions in Ukraine and abroad. There are many like-minded people that join us, educators, students, public sector, and so on. From the very beginning, our institute has had many international meetings. We have had a lot of partners that we cooperated with. So these efforts on the international arena were quite fruitful. I remember back in 2007, our institute organized a conference to mark a century of since the first Congress in Volgograd, and we have had this meeting with between Ukrainian Christians, Czech Christians, and Christians from all across Ukraine, and we were pondering back then on how the great leaders worked on such initiatives back then and how we could do it now. Father Ivan Detsko went out of his ways, and together with Antoine Arzakovsky, he generated new and new initiatives on various levels. And the social ecumenical weeks initiated by them that turned into a great event, not just in Lviv, but also in Kyiv, in other cities. So at that time, the city and the residents of the city wanted to all be present there. They looked for the ways to connect, to contribute, to share their thoughts, to open their hearts. So this testifies to a wonderful contribution, not just to the community of our university, but to interdenominational unity and interdenominational cooperation on the territory of Ukraine, but also outside Ukraine. So the key to our fruitful activities are our employees that pursue the same goals and understanding the importance of their missions. So over many years, we have forged wonderful relationship that rests on many years of friendship, trust, and mutual understanding. So our employees are always well motivated. Even the internal drive, internal understanding of why we implement these projects, what is the aim that we pursue, where we are going together. So we feel that we enjoy being together, we joke around, and even those that have to leave because they move, for instance, or find a different job, they are always sad to leave because they used to feel really comfortable and cozy in the institute. We all have our own niche. For instance, Alina Bohonko is in charge of figures and reports, but whenever somebody needs our help, we try to help one another, complement one another's efforts. I want to acknowledge that we do have, in fact, a wonderful team. I have never treated the members of our team as my subordinates. They were my friends, and similarly to the way I treated Professor Arzakovsky, and I'm grateful to them for such dedicated cooperation.
We strive to continue our activities also to make sure that we achieve this unity. There are three key dimensions of our work. As part of the community of the Ukrainian Catholic University, the Institute of Ecumenical Studies will keep its work to study relations of the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church with other local Ukrainian churches, locally and globally, as the institution with many years of experience, having many interface contexts. One of the primary tasks for the institute is to seek a common understanding and also to forge this understanding between different churches of Ukraine. As one of the first institutes of this kind in Ukraine, we also aim to spread our experience, which could be useful for the Christian community. I think that this is one of the key platforms of this not very official, however formal at times, very friendly ecumenical dialogue. That is why I wish for the Institute of Ecumenical Studies to keep growing, to start new projects, to create new communities, to be part of collaboration with different institutions of Ukraine and beyond Ukraine, and to be this place where people can meet and forge friendships, as well as for ecumenical studies purpose. When we are open to the ecumenical question, when we are dedicated to it, then it is our aim, regardless of whether we are Catholics or Orthodox or Protestant. What is very important for us is to make sure that we fulfill the will of Christ, his covenant, to make sure that we are all in unity. From the political perspective, when we resolve very challenging issues, we follow the path of compromises usually with the word of God, with the teachings of Jesus. We do not have compromise. It is about it is about unity that we hear so much from Jesus. We would like to express gratitude to all our donors, colleagues, graduates, students for their support, for their participation in the Institute's projects, for many years of friendships, and for your trust, open ecumenical relations. Thank you for the idea of this film initiated by Helena Buchonko together with Stepan Dmitryshin. They put it into life. I think that it's a very nice product that we have seen right now. And right now, I would like to invite Dr. Pavlo Smitsnuk, who used to be the director of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. It was back in 2019, in 2022. He's joining us online. We have some remote cooperation. Pavlo is focused on his research right now in the US. And thinking back of our friendship, of our work at the Institute, I would like to express gratitude to Pavlo for his commitment. When he was the director of the Institute, we launched many new projects, and also thanks to his dedication, we managed to launch many new projects and also to implement them. Yes, can you hear me well? Reverend Roman? Thank you. It's a really moving event for me. And I'm full of different emotions listening to the words from one of the most professional people in the realm of ecumenism. That is why it is really great to be present here. And as Anton, I will do probably the same thing. I will focus on three key ideas. And the first idea being friendship. The metaphor of friendship allows us to look at the things from this perspective that we only opt for, because we clearly know who is a friend and who the friend is not. A friend cannot be an enemy. We know that from Carl Smith, this distinction between friends and enemies. If you are a friend and then you become an enemy, or the opposite process, as Greek Catholics these days, they do not perceive the Orthodox or the Protestant as enemies, and the same works oppositely, we understand that this is such a radical change. We have witnessed, but we know that there are still many things that we have to do. A friend is also not a brother, he's not your relative, and we know that we are born within with our families, we live together with them, but friends are those people that we choose, as it is in Simonenko's poetry, that you can choose your friend, you can choose your partner, however you cannot choose your mother. Yes, and a friend is somebody that you choose. It is our intention to love this person. This is not something that we must do. However, what is common between friends and brothers is that we love them even when we disagree with what they do. I think this is a great lesson, that a friend remains a friend even when we do not see eye to eye on something. This is not a Ecumenism is not a mutual admiration company when there are people who all agree with each other. Quite the opposite. These are the people who disagree with each other, and I think that this is a pivotal moment here. Probably it's not clear to everyone because we want to cooperate with somebody who perceives things differently, and ecumenism is a dialogue of friends who disagree with each other, have who think that their counterpart probably do not understand, have to do something, or have to live. But I think that there is a lot of reciprocity in friendship. You can love somebody who is indifferent to you, but well, you cannot be friends with somebody who is indifferent to you. That is why I am really happy to see many Orthodox friends, many Protestant friends who take care of us, and it is reciprocal. There is another idea that I would like to share, as there are many friends among us. There are people from Paris, well, there are also people from Rome. That is why there is a French statement that I would like to insert here. And the more things change, the more they stay unchanged. Today's meeting is about friendship, the same way as an inaugural conference of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies 20 years ago, Reverend Ivan and Bishop Boris mentioned about it. So, volens nolens, we understand that 20 years is quite a stretch of time. And this is a very good opportunity for us to see what we managed to accomplish. However, at the same time, we understand that we are still at the same place. There have been many projects. We did many good things. There were many people who participated in the activities of the institute, many students who presented their research, presented their thesis, so many people who attended also social ecumenical weeks. It is very important for the institute. However, I have this feeling, though maybe it is something very personal, I don't think that a lot has changed if to speak about relations between churches. We know that we have this very big conflict if to speak about the future of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarchy, especially given the legislation which has been adopted recently. And Anton has mentioned that we are also many people present here who really tried hard to enhance these relations. And that is something that we would have never expected from them. There's a lot of pain and disappointment if to speak about this church, but it is about the mission of church. This is the mystery of life, because we have 2000 years of history, and we see that some things remain unchanged. This is the mystery. As any other generation, we tried to do something about it because it is about our actions, it is about the efforts that we apply. And last but not least, the mission. Yeah, so Ola, who has recently celebrated 50 years, we speak about ecumenism and university as something which is covering many things. It is about complexity. And in different universities that where I spent some time, the Ukrainian Catholic University is not only about university. As here we speak about this inclusiveness, about this universality of the Ukrainian Catholic University. It's not only about university as it should be, it is more about the fact of what has to be done. It is thinking in terms of challenges. There is a lot of flexibility demonstrated by the UCU. There is no certain frame that you abide by. And the Institute of Ecumenical Studies is also in this very same paradise. When I joined the institute, there was one thing I couldn't understand. I didn't understand the certificate program for medical psychological support for fathers with special needs. I didn't understand the certification program, but slowly I came to this understanding because I realized how people with special needs could also become teachers for many of us, accepting vulnerability and also their openness to receive support amongst others. These are very important lessons, and that would be good for many of us to learn that. Also, this program for specialists, those who have very little to do with ecumenism. However, it's very important that this program reflected the needs, and this is something which is really in conformity with the spirit of the Ukrainian Catholic University. They really try to cover different dimensions. We know that the institute focuses on one area, but we already have 20 years of history. There's a lot of projects implemented, cooperation with different institutions, with different denominations, chaplains, cultural diplomacy, and there is a very small team behind all of that. The institute, the Ukrainian Catholic University, live in the context of a plethora of challenges. That is why I would like to encourage all of you to support the team of Ivan, Father Roman, Irina, Yulia, Eduard, Oля. The team, which is a small team, however, in such difficult circumstances, being also limited in resources, in times of war, they do a very important work. They need financial support that we see from Lovodorian Foundation. I'm grateful to Novabis, Konrad Adenauer Foundation, Evangelical Church of Germany, and many other foundations. They are in dire need of your donations. They need support from the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. I was really happy to hear the words of His Beatitude, Sviatoslav, also Ihor Jaban, who keeps supporting us, also the support from the policy, international ecumenical organizations, the Conference of Bishops, Bishops' Conferences Council, also intellectual circles. I'm grateful to Lyudmila and other scientists. the representative from the Orthodox University, Georgi from the Institute of Thomas Aquinas, and also the institute also needs support from the theology faculty, the Ukrainian Catholic University. Please do not forget about them. Make sure that you support them. Thank you, everyone. I would like to express gratitude to the Institute team celebrating the 20th anniversary of their activities. Let God protect you and bless you together to victories. Thank you, Pavlo. You will also receive this present. Probably will send it by post. This white t-shirt for you to wear it and not to forget about us. Yes, I need more than one actually. Well, yes, but then you will need to cover the costs. Now it's over to Miroslav Marinovich, who is a great friend of ours, the person who really inspires us, who is a visionary of an ecumenical movement in Ukraine. We are very happy when you participate in events that we organize because you do it in a very friendly fashion. That is why we are extremely happy to see you here today. Glory to Jesus Christ. Dear founders of the Institute, dear leaders of the Institute in the past and currently, dear guests of this academy, dear participants, I would like to congratulate the Institute of Ecumenical Studies with this jubilee. It has not been an easy decade. That is why there is another title that I have, the experience of life at the frontier. However, you, as those who know a lot about ecumenism, you really succeeded. That is why this gratitude is well deserved. But there is one thing which has not been done by the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. If you have Reverend Ivan as the captain, then there has to be some insignia for him, some special uniform. Of course, that whenever we celebrate anniversaries, very often we think back of what took place before because it did not start in 2004. The Lviv Theological Academy was already open for different contexts, and the participants of the presentation of the Institute of Religion and Society in 1997, it was Julian Voronovsky and Lyubomir who was there. There was also the Patriarch Dmitry Yarema and also Augustin Markevich. Also, I would like to mention that publicly it didn't change him. He kept sharing ideas about the religious war in Western Ukraine. Also, these relations, these splits that we had in 1997, the presenters were the representatives of Lviv Theological Academy, of the Collegium, and also of the Kyiv Theological Seminary of the Ukrainian Union of Evangelical Christians Baptists.
And it was under this approach and in this tradition that the Theological Academy has hosted many conferences, seminars, roundtables, and presentations. So, as instructed by His Beatitude Lyubomir, until 2004, it was the Institute of Religion and Society responsible for this domain of work. Out of all other events, I would like to think back to one, maybe not the most prominent, but very memorable to me event. It was the ecumenical seminar for various Ukrainian churches, having the editors of regional interconfessional mass media on the lack of tolerance in their respective media. So it was a signal about an important change in the religious life of Ukraine. The harsh competition between the churches was being replaced by still cautious but already tangible partnership between churches with a view to their shared interests, because many religious communities suffered from lack of professionalism on behalf of the religious press. Of course, the first context inside Ukraine we're still shaky. A lot has been changed by our shared experience during Orange Revolution. This is when we first heard mutual or shared announcements on socially significant issues, and we also have still the memorable pictures of representatives of various churches on the main stage of Maidan. So the participants of revolution got used to the fact that there were various liturgies served during the revolution. And it was in the same year of 2004 when the Institute of Ecumenical Studies of the UCU came into being, who was confident in riding this new ecumenical wave. So back in 1998 and 1998, Bishop Lubomer, back then the helper of his beatitude, created a task force on preparing a document about the stance of the UCU in the domain of ecumenical approach. Later, this document, Ecumenical Concept of the UCU, was approved by the Synod. The work over the concept started at the time when we already finished working on the concept of theological education in Ukraine, and we were working a lot on something else, and this reflected the desire of his beatitude Lubomir to rethink the conceptual framework of church action. So the work was being done using the Institute of Religion and Society of Lviv Theological Academy, and I think Father Ihor remembers how it all came into being, and I'm grateful to the Institute of Ecumenical Studies that with time it took over, and just recently it put a lot of effort into updating this concept that I just mentioned. The achievement of your institute is extremely powerful, and I think the testimony to this rests in previous presentations and the movie. And we have the fruits of wonderful and outstanding leaders, ranging from the founders of the Institute, Father Reverend Ivan Detsko and Professor Arzhakovsky, and many other researchers and employees. So regular meetings hosted by the institutes were the platform for well-known authorities in the field of ecumenism, and this put your institute and UCU all together on the map of the world ecumenical movement. The institute has some special traditions of its own, and one of such traditions is the Ecumenical Social Week. This fall, the 17th event of the kind is going to take place, and the number itself testifies to the fact that this event is an important axis in comparison to other projects of the Institute. But what matters to me is that this is a important channel of cognizing Christian ecumene and helping it learn about us. So it's not about us being liked by the Western Europe, but it's a precondition of our own survival. So in the 90s, the competition that we had made us neither more understandable nor closer to the world. The victim syndrome doomed us to being forgotten. Now, owing to the activities of the Institute, we are now partake in something that was for long considered a norm of mutual coexistence of nations, and the potential of Ukraine in the ecumenical domain is far from being exhausted, because we have not yet came into fruition as the true laboratory of ecumenism, as Pope Paul John II said, and we will still have a lot of work to do. So what concerns the most important task for the Institute of Ecumenical Studies, I will allow myself to touch upon the topic of the future of ecumenism altogether. I would like to mention right away that I will not represent the stance of the Ukrainian Catholic University, but rather that of my own. Despite all the gravitational turmoils that have to do with great politics, the ecumenism vector persists and remains towards Christian understanding. The thirst of Christians towards understanding and reconciliation is unstoppable, and achievements are multiple. But today it is clear that the spirit of revival and reconciliation that is embodied by three great people, Pope John the 23rd and Pope Paul VI, is now a little bit being forgotten. And there are many reasons for this. And I would like to focus on just one. In many international Christian documents, you can see a statement that the disagreement between our churches is despicable and makes it impossible for faith. And this statement travels from one ecumenical document to another, and basically it turns into just a regular expression that gets by the attention of Christians and doesn't really draw their attention. Meanwhile, this statement is key if you take into account the evangelical mission of the church into a 21st century. So the 21st century anxiety about the separation is not enough. Sometimes we have an impression that all the members of the ecumenical process are too cautious in terms of supervising one another. They are too much about positional negotiations. Too many Christians still live in their small bubble world, which is the phrase that is fashionable to use right now, where they hope to protect themselves from various turmoils that their opponents encounter. So instead of solidarity, the world churches show confessional selfishness, indifference, or even certain joy on the occasion of grief that their opponents are suffering from. So, of course, this is the way to nowhere. The illustration of such withdrawal can now be seen in the degradation of Russian Orthodox Church. The response of the Christian world to the appearance of the hybrid, politically centered doctrine of the Russian world, which became a motivational platform for planned recovery of the Russian Empire, is not enough. I would even say that it's pathetically weak. But the situation itself is quite odious as it is. So, first of all, the faithful of the church are helpless when encountering the demons of the Russian history. So, this is an expression of a recent news, and unfortunately these demons are the ones who motivate in this doctrine. The Orthodox symphony is instrumentalized by the church, and instead friendship as ecumenical value, we have experienced a genocidal world against the nation, the majority of which is Orthodox. So the threat to the Christian world that stems from the Russian world is so vast that I would like to repeat once again that Christian ecumene should be able to navigate and agree on a shared condemnation, but still at the end of 2023 what has been made public is just one statement on Orthodox theologians of the world in 2022, which is signed by only 342 people. Other denominations, even within the Orthodox domain, are keeping silence in the way of political correctness. So, but still, all the churches, all the Christian denominations should feel the tension of shared responsibilities that the defenders of Tsarhorod on the eve of the siege felt. And it is only then that the words about understanding the withdrawal and the disparate nature of the churches will be truly felt. Until recently, in ecumenism, we focused on what brought Christians together, while everything that separated them was set aside. And this was the force of the stage of ecumenism, but also it was its weakness. Of course, we can celebrate this approach because as Christians, we are too much used to looking into the darkness. This makes our souls dark, and this strips us of the opportunity to see the light. But a much bigger challenge to our Christian conscience and to our Christian mind is how to find agreement in order to resolve Christian misunderstandings and counter arguments, and there are quite a few. It also seems that ecumenism for a certain period of time is no later a high road for mercy and sacrifice. And today the pragmatic approach of many moves along the road. It's sober, and we are making our stances more precise. We are making our expressions more elaborate, and this is how the tactics of so much favored in the West small steps looks. Of course, we cannot we should appreciate this stage, and this is how we prepare the platform for new beginnings, and we should work on it cautiously. But this pragmatic approach is somewhat uninspired. It's too much centered on the barriers to be able to break through these barriers. And so I think that a breakthrough will be made by not just a official, but a great servant of God who will hear the voice of God once again. And still preparing the platform forward is the work of people. Therefore, I would like to wish upon the Institute of Ecumenical Studies of the UCU to keep working on its dignified mission as Isaiah says, set the road for the Lord in the desert, make the path for our Lord even.
Thank you, Miroslav. This is also a present for you. I will share a secret with you that no matter how many times I invited Miroslav Maranovic to participate, he never says no. And each time I ask him again, I'm always anxious. Maybe there will be a no this time. And despite some health-related problems, he decided to be present here through this metaphysical friendship that we heard about from Miroslav Maranovic in his presentation. I would like to invite Father Georgi Kovalenko, who is the rector of the Open Orthodox University of Saint Sophia the Wise. And we have very close friendship between our institutions as good wine. We are happy to welcome you here in Lviv. Thank you for being in person here. I think that you already heard from me. I think that would suffice for me just to come here and to take my t-shirt because you already heard me speaking. However, when I was on my way here, there was this image which emerged, and I would like to share it with you. That is why 2 minutes of your time. I was coming here to attend also a birthday celebration, and I think when I was 11, I heard one song. It was 45 years ago, and I was really struck by this song. I still remember this song, and it is something that really explains nicely the ecumenical dimension. The author of the song mentions that he invited all his friends for the celebration. At the end of this birthday celebration, when separately all of them come to him to say goodbye, in despair, he says that this could be the words of Christ, who said that you are friends of mine. He wanted to gather all of his friends together at one table, but at the end, he says then, why you are friends only to me, but you are strangers to each other? That is why I think that God has accomplished his mission by calling us friends, founding his church, and it is our mission to become friends to each other. That is why, with this commandment, we know that you will become friends if you love each other. It's really important to really congratulate a friendly institution here because not there are different institutions. Some of them are friendly, and we also have fruitful collaborations with many institutions. And this is an example of a true friendlier institute with true friends. I also would like to give the floor to our Dutch friend who is in Italy at the moment. Our pilgrim, this is Helen Zorgdrager, our friend from the Netherlands. She's a pilgrim because she likes to travel to Ukraine a lot. When we started with our master's program of ecumenical studies, each semester Helen visited Ukraine for 1 month. She lived in Ukraine, and students really loved her because she's such a great teacher. She also brought students to different interesting places. Helen, thank you so much for this friendship that we share, and it's over to you now.
It's Roman. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, we can hear you.
Slava Isusu Christu.
Slava
I
Naviki.
greet you from the monastery of Bose, an ecumenical monastery in northern Italy. I am here at a conference on justice and peace, a Christian perspective, and it is organized by the St. Andrew's Biblical and Theological Institute from Moscow. They are from Moscow, but now the staff is for the greater part in exile. So I think this is a fitting place to be connected to you in Lviv today. Doroгі друзі, яка наша історія?
Dear friends, if we speak about our history.
In 2005, Kerk in Actie, the mission agency of our church in the Netherlands, Protestant Church, was looking for more interaction with theological institutes in Eastern Europe, in particular from the Orthodox tradition. How could we, as a church in the Netherlands, by way of theological engagement, help building Ukrainian society and Ukrainian church life? How could we help building bridges across denominations and cultures? The Institute of Ecumenical Studies was just starting up. When I came for a first orientation to Lviv in the summer of 2005, Vice Rector Jeffrey Wills enthusiastically told about the establishment of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies and how much welcome a Protestant professor would be for the master program of Ecumenical Studies. After the blessing of Father Boris Guciak, it was decided that I would join. I came to Lviv in autumn 2005 without any task description. It was like jumping in the deep. And since I am fond of swimming, I like this very much. I got to know Antoana Jakovsky very soon and Ivan Dechko. I heard about the ambitious plans of the Institute, and I only got more and more enthusiastic. This is how I started teaching in a master program of Ecumenical Studies and worked together with the colleagues from the first hour, among whom I would like today Alicia Grin, initially the coordinator of the master program, with special gratitude. Some persons of the first hour are still there. Staff and students are remarkably loyal to the Institute. This is so fantastic about the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. It is not the organization or the formal structures that matter. Its foundation are the people and the bonds of friendship that have been forged throughout the years. That nourishing ground that ultimately gives life to all the activities the Institute of Ecumenical Studies has developed for years with amazing creativity, courage, and determination. Since 2005, I came every semester to Ukraine, mostly in my blue Volkswagen Golf, and stayed for 6 weeks in Lviv, besides traveling to all the regions of Ukraine to visit the partners of Kerk in Actie. Throughout the years, I came to know so many wonderful students. I loved my students, not only in the classroom we met, also on Sundays when we visited religious communities in Lviv, from Pentecostals and Baptists to the Latter-day Saints. Some students also came to my place in Volice Voloshina, where we chatted around a cup of tea and cookies. Most memorable were the excursions we made in the old Uku bus to the monasteries around, to Kregiv and Univ, and to the Roma in Zakarpattia, and to Romania, where we had an exchange with Hungarian Reformed students from Cluj-Kolozsvár. What did I teach? I can say whatever was needed in the program. There was always a course on Protestant church in Ukraine in history and theologians of the 20th century, like Bart Bonhoeffer and the like, on women theologians in Orthodoxy, on mission studies, on churches and reconciliation, on human rights and Christian faith. Additionally, I taught in the distance learning master program of Ecumenical Studies. Ecumenism is usually distinguished in 3 strands: the dialogue of hands, that is ethically oriented, the dialogue of the heart, in which the prayerful persons of the different religions meet, and the dialogue of mind, that brings together the learned of the different religions. What I like and admire so much about the Institute of Ecumenical Studies is that all the strands are present in the programs and in the people. There is research, education, academic books that are published by scholars in and around the IES. There are conferences and roundtables in which the theologians sharpen their arguments and positions. There are ecumenical prayers on important dates and events. And there are programs that find their focus in social activities, in training for social work, in training for hands-on critical journalism. The Ecumenical Social Week, in which I participated from the very beginning, is the telling example of how ecumenism of hearts, hands, and mind go together to bring real social transformation, to create a community that is, thanks to the unifying spirit of Jesus Christ, more than the sum of its parts. The Institute of Ecumenical Studies itself is a community of hope, faith, and love. I experienced this in a very special way when I came to the Maidan protests in January 2014. After arrival on the square, I called Roman Fihas because I had understood he would be there. However, he told me that unfortunately, just that morning, after many days and nights on Maidan, he was on the bus returning to Lviv. After that phone call, my phone rang again. One of the female colleagues from the Institute called. Pani Helen, she said, we have the rule that nobody should be alone in Maidan. That is too risky. I will call one of our students to take care of you. Not even 15 minutes later, indeed, one of my students, Sviatoslav, appeared, and with him his friends. And together we had an unforgettable day of protest. In the freezing cold of winter, I felt embraced by the loving circle of the ecumenical Uku community. Today, the expertise of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies in building bridges across divided groups, churches, nations is more desired than ever. In wartime, experts like you, with strong networks around the world, are needed to organize solidarity with Ukraine and to pave a way to the future. People like you are needed who are trained and skilled in dialogue, who do not easily and cheaply talk about reconciliation, but yet tirelessly search for resources of hope and perseverance. People like you are needed, who keep believing in the words of Christ, that all may be one. Again, you are at the forefront of addressing difficult topics, now in raising the reflections on healing the wounds, on what just peace entails, and on damaging effects of the war on the ecology. I hope that I may continue journeying with you, my friends, that I may continue contributing to the work, and that peace will come in our days. May God bless the work of your hands, heart, and mind. May the Institute live long, grow and flourish for the well-being of Ukraine, of its wonderful and brave people, and for the well-being of all creatures in God's world without end. Вітаю всіх. Привіт і до побачення.
Thank you, Helen, for your kind, sincere words, for your greetings, for this sharing of yours. And now I would like to invite Dr. Roman Solovey, He's the director of the Eastern European Institute of Theology. He is a well-known intellectual and a theologist. He's a very good friend of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. Thank you. Glory to Jesus Christ. Dear friends, colleagues, on behalf of the Eastern European Institute of Theology and Eastern Protestant Community of Ukraine congratulate you on the 20th anniversary of the Institute's activity. The Institute of Ecumenical Studies, the team, projects, publication is a unique thing for the relations of our institutions, because we see not only the declaration by the Institute, by shaping of this open space for the ecumenical meeting, for forging these relations, when traditions of all people are perceived as a gift, just enriching the experiences and traditions of each other. I think that the very fact that here we decide to speak about friendship as an ecumenical value, it is not fortuitous that we have opted for this subject matter. This is a very important landmark. This is something which clearly shows us the state that the Institute is on, and it is a privilege for me to be part of presenters today. Also, I would like to focus on friendship, because this friendship is something which is a roadmap for the future. This is a sign of hope that the Institute, which is the place where Christians of different denominations feel freely when gathered together, that this can become a cradle for the future. What do we imply by friendship? So, friendship is fairly, according to Plato, as an example of integrity, is something which is direly needed for one's life. He is convinced that nobody would ever opt for life without friends. For the ancient philosophy, this is a widespread assumption. And Aristotle speaks about three different friendships. One of such friendships is a formal one about some benefits, some advantages that you can gain from each other. The second one is friendship, especially when you are young, when you make some friends. And then we have telephilia. This is friendship when you wish good for somebody else, for themselves. And this is something that we do not come across very often. It happens only for people who have similar virtues. And I would like to cite here that you cannot be a friend as long as you are not worth of this friendship and trust. This is a strong friendship, and this is something which has very good foundation. And also, when you are sure about each other's values and virtues, we start with the intention of friendship. This is how it starts, but everything just grows when you have this understanding of common time sharing. And Aristotle quotes the words of an author that many friendships were disrupted because of lack of conversations. Then, if to speak about ecumenical friendships, representatives of different Christian traditions, what about the gain here? Should there be an exception here? From our experience and our cooperation with the Institute, we know that this is something which really helps us to flip these stereotypes. It promotes interface, mutual dialogue and understanding, participation. And ecumenical friendship is also about some joy and satisfaction. Is there anything which could bring you more satisfaction than a conversation through which you learn more about somebody that you talk to? Also, it is about the experience of common prayer when your heart is filled with joy, when these walls which divide us on earth, they do not reach the heaven, and we know that the Lord loves us all the same. striving for this ecumenical friendship, for this ideal ecumenical friendship, and we try to really value each other not only on the basis of what we can give each other, but also grounded on who we are. For Aristotle, this common grounding is integrity, but for Christ followers, this is about unity between different people. Ukrainian Kharkiv philosopher Alexander Filonenko oftentimes mentioned that friendship emerges when there are two people who are more interested in something else that unites them, and this is what they are aimed at. And for us, it is about Jesus. It is about faith, when you're ready to accept the gift of God, and this is about us opening doors for this true ecumenical friendship. And in this relationship, there is recognition of the needs of each other and also commitment to take care for each other. It's not easy to have this kind of friendship even between two individuals, let alone when we speak about the churches, because there are differences in their practices. We also have the experience of symbol hostility, which could be quite an obstacle for such a friendship being established. That is why establishing of this friendship starts from scratch. This is your willingness to have this friendship, or according to Leonard Jimenez, this will to friendship. This is the recognition that despite similarity and differences, there are some connections between all participants. This is something which is unique and necessary. Your willingness to become friends, this is your openness to meet each other. That is why the will precedes formation of this friendship. And even if participants of dialogue are not ready to respect each other, to appreciate each other because of a number of different reasons, this willingness to have friendship helps you to recognize this experience of hostility and indifference. And sometimes indifference is even worse than hostility, because sometimes hostility is about your attitude, and we know that indifference is something which is opposite to love. That is why on this path it is very important for us to reflect on destructive relations that we used to have without concealing these wounds that we incurred, and actually understanding that we could have done something to others. It is about humility as part of your character, but also this special treatment of your religious tradition. We know that there were contexts between different religious movements, philosophical, cultural ideas, the way they were interconnected. There were some political events, and each time it was this clash of legacy. Each time we had to update these traditions, or some new traditions emerge. That is why it is not only about this integral Christian tradition, but we can speak about all other traditions. All of them have the experience of past encounters. It reflects some controversial, however, unique and much needed voices.
The recognition of inner multiplicity and our own tradition, which is based in history, the ability to be self-critical or even ironic in one's own approach. It heals us from being too selfish. It shows us that we are in a way incomplete and need others for cooperation, for interaction, having a friend as the other one. Each of the participants of ecumenical dialogue, therefore, is responsible for being attentive to other voices, recognizing that your own contribution and knowledge is incomplete without the contribution of others. We can think back to the friendship of Karl Barth and Ursula Balthasar. It's a very interesting example, or sometimes, but even more often, we see it as a miracle. While friendship occupies a central part in the gospel, and we have already heard this, how Jesus talked to his closest friend during their Last Supper, and we remember that before talking about friendship, he does something very important. He takes the towel, he takes the pot with water, and he washes off the feet of his disciples as a servant. And then he explains, if I, the Lord, have washed your feet, you need to wash the feet of one another. And then soon, when Judas, who intended to betray Christ, he says, I give you a new commandment. Love one another as I loved you. And this is how everybody will recognize you as my followers, when you will have this love for one another. And a bit later, Jesus in chapter 15 also says that here's my commandment for love to one another, the way I loved you. There's no greater love than that when you give up your soul for your own friends, and you are my friends if you act the way I call upon you to act. I don't call you a servant anymore, because the servant doesn't know what the master does, but I call you friends. And then in chapter 17, Jesus promises his disciples the gift of the Holy Spirit, and he prays not only for their own sake, but also to those who believe in me through their through their words, so that all may be one. So in this way, Jesus invites everybody to be friends with him and friends with one another. So Jesus' words, to some extent, reiterate the traditional approach to friendship, but also adds other important features. For instance, giving up your life. It is a classical way to understand that this is your highest sacrifice, but your friend should be noble and worthy of this sacrifice. For instance, in one of the ancient compositions, there is the sujet, and there's a competition between the friends in terms of who goes back to their native land and who becomes a sacrifice, and they are ready to give their life for one another. But Jesus, in the course of his conversation, was getting ready to give up his life not for the sake of noble men, but for the sinners. And from the viewpoint of classical wisdom, it was not wise to stay friends with somebody who rejected our friendship. But God's friendship is Christ, acts outside of such boundaries. Christ acts as our friend when we might still be his enemies, in order to transform us and to turn us into his friends. And what remains for us is just to respond to this love that he offers to everybody, and to grow in this healing friendship. So this is a proposal of friendship that extends beyond the understanding of this virtue in Aristotelian understanding. So the followers of Christ are called to be a sign, or you could say here, an icon of God's friendship. It is God's openness towards a human being, as shown in Christ, is a precondition for us Christian compassion, humanitarian efforts, and ecumenical cooperation. On this side, of course, friendship, as any other relationship between people, has a stain of sin, former traumas, and our fundamental metaphysical separation. But will for friendship, willing full desire to get outside one's own tradition of friendship, unlock it for somebody else, is a sign of hope that once our disparate eyes will turn into we's, that we are now more separate entities, but we will become interconnected children of God. We will not lose our individuality, but instead, each and every one of us will thaw in the community of friendship and God's creation that lives in peace with one another and with their creator. And I hope that this institute becomes the environment that shapes this friendship and environment of growth. And a little gift for you, our magazine, theological magazine, that where we publish a lot of articles, and of your employees as well. So Rory Kolenko is the rector of Open Orthodox University, and Roman Solovey is an example, an icon of open Protestant movement in Ukraine, and we are so grateful for his readiness to always visit our seminars and our meetings. And I would like to invite over Father Dr. Peter Balog, the director of St. Thomas Aquinas Institute in Kyiv. We are grateful to everybody that you represent, all the friends of our institute. Some are in Poland, but we have joint projects like Christian Academic Society would have been impossible without the participation of your brothers. Glory to Jesus Christ. My heartfelt greetings goes to you, to the management of the Institute, to the former management, to all the guests. Yes, thank you very much for remembering about our order. I saw Father Padre Octava, but in the movie, still looking very young with a beard. I'm grateful to God for the 20 years of your existence, and I wish you many more years to come, because we do need this institute, even because there are so many issues, despite the fact that there has been the Vatican Council 10 years ago, and some ecumenical initiatives are over 100 years old, but still in the 21st century you can hear here and there, even in the Catholic environment, you can hear some pejorative epithets to describe fellow Christians. Things like Stunde about Protestant brothers, or uniates to speak negatively of another confession. So I think the Institute is much needed. I'm the last person to speak, right? So I won't keep you for long, but I want to right now navigate an issue that I used to research once, and it's in my monograph, not in Ukrainian, unfortunately, but hopefully this year, or maybe at the beginning of next year, it will be issued in Ukrainian. So I would like to share one idea about double co-communion. Let me share what it is. I showed this monograph to Antoine once, and he read an abstract, and maybe some others have seen it. So it's a bit forgotten concept, but at certain point of time, his beatitude Huzar and his predecessor worked on it. So the issue of unity between churches is still topical, and it's still complex. Separations have often happened, unions or coming together happened very rarely. And even after uniting, these rare attempts to unite were not lengthy. For instance, union in Florence, they united, but it didn't come to pass. Or union in Berestechko, and this led to a split later here on the territory of Rus, and one could understand why these unions were not to last. I think one of the gravest reasons was the lack of humility of all the parts, all the participants, or the fact that, for instance, when in Brest there was a union, the subjects were equal, Rome had an attitude that we are a true church and we are uniting with a part who is not a church but is to be a church when they come join us. That is not we unite, but they join us. This is what I see having studied different documents from the 17th century after the union in Brest. And the attempts to change this negative paradigm were had during the Second Vatican Council, and now the emphasis is with the concept of co-communion, not so much on joining the see of Peter, join us and then we will be united. But what remains to be resolved is the jurisdictional powers of the Bishop of Rome. But for few, Eastern churches have rejected that. We are speaking of a model of the first millennium, but the Eastern churches never recognized the jurisdiction and the predominance of the Bishop of Rome over themselves. So after the Second Council, we started navigating the revisiting of this concept. So in 1995, there was an attempt to revisit, to encourage all the Christians to revisit this concept. And afterwards, Catholic, Protestant, and Orthodox sides are looking for templates how to accomplish this service. The parts of Kievan Church split because of the union later on, so to say, into uniates and disuniates, those who are united and disunited. So they put a lot of efforts into, since the very beginnings, to be honest, that could be referred to as the first attempts to introduce double loyalty or double communion. Let me explain what it is. Unfortunately, these attempts failed for several reasons. First of all, exclusivity stance of the Holy See. Number two, the discrimination of the Orthodox on behalf of the then Polish government. Inimicability of the Orthodox faithful towards the Polish government, inconducive environment of the Uniate Church after the Union, and of course the discord in terms of understanding of the role of Roman bishop in the then church. But back then, we also see the attempts that such negotiations are, it is possible to have such negotiations with the then Orthodox of Ukraine. So one of the obstacles in the dialogue of double co-communion is undermining the church status of Ukrainian church on behalf of some Orthodox, especially of Moscow Patriarchate. The latter are convinced that Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church used to be a part of their patriarchate, and then they joined the Roman Church, and that's why the church is not empowered in the dialogue. They are not a side to be dealt with. The side could be seen as the Vatican or the Rome, but not the church itself. So this is where it stems for. So creating a sister community could be only when you create it with somebody who you consider a sister and who you consider an equal in terms of dignity and origin. So desire to create Kievan Church, single Kievan Church, and this desire in the 20th century stemmed first and foremost from the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church. But if it's a unilateral initiative, it's not going to come to fruition. It needs to be bilateral. So, of course, you could say that this is only human dimension of the problem. It's not so important the way somebody speaks of the church, whether the church has the ecclesial status or not. But what matters most, you could speak theologically wise, is what God thinks of it. But of course, the reception of the church on earth should have some visible aspects recognizable to church members or other churches. We couldn't say we are the church because the God considers it that way. This way, we need to have some objective grounds for this. The idea of this double co-communion is about vertical relationship of the Ukrainian and Kievan tradition. Unfortunately, Moscow Church undermines the status of the UGCC as a church of its own, or often even rejects it. For instance, the Orthodox Church of Moscow Patriarchate openly rejects it in its documents. Another obstacle, as we see it, is the fact that there is competition. The competition persists. Who is an heir to Kievan Church, which was born here in 1988? And quite often one would hear that UGCC is not an heir. And as well as in the domain of the church status of the UGCC, the voice of the Orthodox is not grounded in ample argumentation. The union of the Eastern Church, one of the main arguments why UGCC is not an heir, because of the union, because you joined the Roman Patriarchate, but the union didn't destroy its ecclesiastic status. Meanwhile, it was placed in the context of universal church, so of a higher rank. And of course, I also paid attention to this when doing my research on this. When signing a union, both sides have had a different understanding of their own sides. So the Holy See thought that the church status, the bishops and their parishes, they will gain the status after the union. So the church will become a full-fledged church, while Eastern bishops that arrived to Rome and then to Brest in 1556 never doubted their ecclesiastic status. They only thought that they are lacking universal unity, not church status. And this is actually also true for the union in Florence. Petro Mohela had a negative attitude to the union in Brest, but he actually had a good opinion, positive opinion on the union in Florence. Maybe this is because of the fact that Roma back then treated the other side as their partners or as full-fledged churches. So this double loyalty model, what does it entail? It entails connection with the Church of Rome, Constantinople, and perhaps Moscow, as its metropolis here in Ukraine is the largest.
On top of that, all churches of Ukraine who would join the United Kiev Church would be part of the Mother Church and its traditions. To some extent, that would be unity in diversity. According to ecclesiology, Western tradition, it doesn't really require this formal subordination. we do not really have this type of subordination. However, there is a link, and the Ukrainian Greek Catholic Church is based on the code of Eastern European churches, is subordinate to the Vatican. That is why and Lubomir Huser expressed this idea many times in his writings, but then this idea of communion under both kinds, it's really important to have this evolution so the Bishop of Rome has to be somebody who protects, who is the source. Also, it is about certain powers. However, these powers are not about legal framework with regard to other sister churches which are connected with Rome. It is about brotherly love. It is about Eucharistical unity. Some theologists, as I already mentioned, are looking for some model of serving in the first millennium. However, if to speak about this period of time, it seems to be a utopia for us to go back to that period. Even if you have the agreement without refusing from your own ecclesiology, it wouldn't last long. We know that in the first millennium, there was a certain alienation between East and West. That is why in the future it makes sense to suggest a proposal as based on this communion under both kinds. I think that, yes, I read a proposal of one of Orthodox theologists, Sheptytskyi, who believe that the differences between East and West are more about cultural influences, alien culture and Roman civilization in the West. It is not about us going back to the first millennium, as Archbishop Skopalski suggests. It is us going back to Galilee. This is the place when disciples met Jesus and were in union with him. Very often we hear about communio, their relations between churches. However, there's a different perception of communion. It is not really the same as communion or co-communion. Also, in the 20th century, Malkian Church tried to implement the idea of communion under both kinds. Do you have, well, Malkites, Greek Catholics was Orthodox Malkites. They offered it to Rome, this idea. However, it was declined because it was not understood, this idea of, well, communion or co-communion, communion under both kinds. For the Catholic Church, it is quite a problematic, but it is even more for the Orthodox Church. I studied different documents, different materials, so it is quite a pessimistic stance that they take on that. It is not only about the power, it is also about these differences of other kind. They are not well regulated. And only when we speak about primate and faith, we can speak about communion under both kinds, because unity for Orthodox is the result, it's just not the path towards. That is why from some Orthodox Christians of Ukraine, we can hear some positive feedback, having the idea of communion under both kinds. It is only under a condition of Greek Catholics refusing from these ideas which are not in conformity with their faith. That was something which was added after first 7 councils. And this idea is a grassroots idea, a local idea. Yes. Well, to sum up whether this idea is still alive or it is no longer alive, I think that we really need to work more on this idea, to supplement it, to analyze this concept, how feasible it is. I do not think that it is a utopian idea. I think that it is quite realistic. Of course, it is not easy actually to have one united Kievan church locally without having this unity higher. And of course, it could be a bottom-up approach. Then we hope that if there will be some conversations and discussion launched about communion under both kinds here, then I think that Rome, Constantinople, and Moscow, without their heretical ideas, of course, thinking of these new ideas. Thank you, Reverend, because it's really important for us to have this type of communion, and it was really interesting to hear about this particular topic. I would like to add on my behalf that if to speak about grassroots level, we have priests from different churches and sometimes we have common liturgies. However, these are some occasional cases, and sometimes it is not done publicly because no one knows how bishops will react. Also, if to speak about chaplains, and Konstantin Sikov is another person I would like to invite, the director of the Center of the European Humanitarian Studies at the Kyiv-Mohyla University. He's also an editor of Spirit and Letter. You are a very good friend of ours. Glory to Jesus Christ. Can you hear me? Well, yes, we can hear you. Thank you for putting in practice of the ideas that I mentioned at the presentation, because we know that strong friendship is something that really proves that you not only have good intentions at your heart, but it is also about strong mind. And this is what we heard in all of the presentations today. Well, 2 decades, of course, we have this representation of 2 and a symbol of a circle next to 2. That is why in the 3rd decade, it is important for us to think of this idea of Clement, that rays, they go together in the center. That is why when we are closer to God, we can do it through getting closer to each other. And the first circle, of course, that was the first decade of your activities. During the 2nd decade, there was another dynamic when we are getting closer with somebody else. We also show that we are closer to God. And if to speak about this 3rd circle, this 3rd phase of the activity of your institute, let you be supported by a wide range of your friends, all institutions that have earned your respect. Make sure that there is a lot of trust and there is a lot of hope. Here I would like to refer to Olivia Clement. And Clement was the one who have the seminal work on conversations. And there is another book translated, The Land of Trust and Hope. So let your institute be the space for hope and trust. I would like to give it to you as a present. And there is another book by Ihor Kozlovsky, Dignity is Truthfulness. This is something which will remind you of our friendship that we have between spirit and letter. Thank you for the translation of a seminal work of Anton Zhakovsky. Miroslav Marinovich also has spoken about the experience of living at the front line, the metaphysique, ecumenique. You're absolutely right to translate this essay, but when we translated Montaigne's works, we used a different term for that. I think that this is an additional interpretation, that this is an experience of metaphysical ecumenism and like a hallmark if to speak about gold. And we know that true friendship is a plant which grows slowly. Let's not be frightened whenever there are some hostile strikes dealt. You are absolutely our true friend. Lots of gratitude to you. Summing up our Solemn Academy, the meeting of today of like-minded people, partners, friends, I would like to express gratitude to everyone who have gathered here, to those who have joined us online, for those who would really love to join us. However, due to some limited resources, we couldn't make it, and they expressed their greetings. Well, the bad news is that we still have splits between Christians and between churches. The good news is that the Institute will have its hands full, not for the upcoming year, but probably for the upcoming decade. And sometimes we feel like giving up, but we understand that this is the task of God that we have to undertake, and we hope that we will really see the fruits of our work, that we do not just look at each other, that we move in the same direction, that this friendship we've been talking so much about from different angles, for it to give us strength to keep this journey and to look at each other from a different perspective, perceiving each other as friends, not as enemies, because in this way we can resolve some shared challenges, some common problems that we have. And to end this academy, I would like to express gratitude to the team of the Institute of Ecumenical Studies who made it happen. That is why I would like to invite all of my colleagues who organized this celebration, Olha, Irina, Kitura, who helped us to moderate this event, Olha, Yurko, Yuri Skira, Helena Bohonko. We do not have two very important employees of the Institute. This is Taras Kurlas and Eduard Berdik, because they fell ill. That's why they couldn't make it, but I hope that they've joined us online. I'd like to express gratitude to the team of the Institute, former employees. However, you never say ex, you never say former. I know that so part of your heart is still with the Institute. We also express gratitude to Reverend Ivan Datsko, Natalia, Olena, Olesa, Marichka, as well as many others, Lesia, who is part of the theology faculty, all of those who remember about us. And before we end this academy with a joint prayer, I would like also to invite you to have a group photo. There are not many of us, but we try our best, and we hope that our efforts will be multiplied by God and that we will reach this unity we are praying for. And we will end this meeting with a prayer about this so much needed gift of union. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thank you. We also have an album which we have in the Institute of Ecumenical Studies. Yeah, so I kindly invite you to write something for us to have a good memory of this event. I also ask you to turn on your cameras. Those who are participating online, we have Jerome, we have Ludmila with us. Happy to see you. We have our students, and I also invite our participants to join us here at the stage for a group photo.